This podcast was developed by the Maryland Restorative Approaches Collaborative, a partnership between the Maryland State Department of Education and the Center for Dispute Resolution at the University of Maryland Francis King Carey School of Law to support restorative approaches across Maryland. This podcast series, Restorative Approaches, Our Stories, Our Voices, is hosted by Robin McNair. All of the podcasts are available on C-Drum's Restorative Approaches Resources website.
In this episode, Robin chats with her peer from Anne Arundel County Public Schools, Kathy Rockefeller. Kathy traces her career evolution from litigator to mediator to school climate specialist to help decrease the number of students in the school-to-prison pipeline and raise better humans in Maryland.
Hello, and welcome to episode 5 of C-Drum's Restorative Approaches, Our Stories, Our Voices. I am your host, Robin McNair, and I am excited to introduce our fourth guest today, Ms. Kathy Rockefeller, JD. Now, let me tell you a little bit about this amazing person. Kathy Rockefeller is a conflict resolution professional with a passion around transforming traditional school discipline with effective and sustainable restorative practices. In 2016, she joined Anne Arundel County Public Schools, AACPS, as a district-wide school climate specialist, working to design and implement restorative practice systems for the 83,000 AACPS students. She is impressed by AACPS's deep commitment to restorative practices and its substantial progress. Before joining AACPS, Kathy directed the Mediation and Conflict Resolution Center, MCRC, for Howard County for 11 years. And that is where I had the pleasure of first meeting Kathy. She has presented and or testified in support for restorative practices in education to various state legislators and educational bodies. She is an active founding member of the Circle of Restorative Practices for Maryland, better known as CRI. Kathy, welcome, and thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. It is definitely our pleasure to have you share your journey with us. So speaking of that, I know that your bio says you are a JD. So I would like for you to kind of share your restorative journey from being a lawyer to becoming the school climate specialist for Anne Arundel Public Schools.
Well, I graduated from University of Maryland Law School and passed the bar and started working in litigation. And I loved the intellectual challenge of litigation, but really very shortly after I started, I found I couldn't sync head and heart. I just couldn't help people who were working to win against another side, especially when sometimes I knew it might actually be what I might consider an unjust outcome. For example, sometimes in order to fulfill my ethical lawyer duty, to best represent my client, my job was actually to delay any outcome in an effort to deplete the other side's resources and things like that. I just couldn't sleep well with that reality. So I still had law school loans to pay. So eventually, after having different part-time jobs in different areas, I gravitated to mediation because I thought I could help people still use my legal background, but help folks find a middle ground. And maybe I could feel better about that. And at that time in Maryland, unless you were a divorce attorney, and I did not want to pursue that route, it was almost completely volunteer based if you were a mediator. So I began as a volunteer at the Mediation and Conflict Resolution Center of Howard County, MCRC, and then I started working as a case manager there and finally became the director, which I loved. And in that role, we as a group, MCRC, partnered. It was a nonprofit, and we partnered with Community Mediation Maryland to do research on the effect of mediation on recidivism. If incarcerated people were offered the opportunity to mediate before they were released. So what we did was we partnered in Howard County with the Howard County Detention Center, and we were part of the statewide results of that research, which was that it does have a significant impact if incarcerated people are permitted to have professional mediation with whoever they choose from the outside before they're released. So that was really groundbreaking research nationally. It was a Maryland study, very exciting. But one thing that really struck me was each time we went in each month, we would give our presentation and invite folks to choose to mediate if they wanted to. And I was struck by the answer to one question. And each year, as I would tally up the results, it would just hit my heart. And that answer was, at what point do you first remember kind of going in the opposite direction of the law or the rules? Like, when was your first time, whether you were caught or not? How old were you? And I was struck by how often the answer was, it all started with a suspension in middle school.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so disheartening. And at the same time, I was starting to read about the school to prison pipeline. And I realized I'm actually working with the people where the pipeline dumps out. I'm working with sort of the victims of what is the school to prison pipeline. And so our center kind of started to develop and get trained in restorative practices. And some of us went to IIRP, and we developed different, we worked with different, or we embraced different models of it. And we had enough people that we approached Homewood Center in Howard County, which is their alternative education center, and eventually grew an RP team and partnered with 26 schools in Howard County, and began just offering them particularly responsive circles. So if they had conflicts, things like that, we would help. And then this job in Anne Arundel opened. It was the first of its type at the district level in the state. And I applied, and the rest is history. It's been a great journey for me. I miss Howard County, but we did move to Anne Arundel County, and I have loved my colleagues and been an admirer of the system and the way it approaches education.
All right. So, Kathy, you are a pioneer of this work in the state of Maryland. That's incredible. That is incredible. Thank you so much.
I think that just means I'm old.
The wise and full of wisdom to teach.
I'll take it. I earned it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things you said that really struck me was when you said head and the heart, and there was no real connection there. Can you kind of share with me how the head and the heart works within restorative practices in school?
So for me, helping students figure out for themselves the best way to resolve their own conflict. And this would be true of adults too, in the broader restorative justice field, but I'm just going to focus on students. And I just feel like that is a work of, it's a kind of a calling. And I think everyone makes mistakes, and we as a system and as a people in this country have made a pretty big mistake. And that mistake is to stop, to separate feelings and emotion from punishment, litigation, etc. And, the idea is to not think about the heart. And I think that's devastating for us as a society, and particularly for our children who need to hear that we all made mistakes as well. And they need to know that they can have a second chance. but not just a second chance, like here's a hug and a lollipop. And here's where the intellectual piece of it comes, right? The head and the heart. This is where the head part comes for me. If it was all just huggy, huggy, I would be out of here so fast. It is not. It is about accountability. If we don't hold our students accountable for their actions, we're sending them a message that we don't think they can do it. And we have to be sending them the message that, number one, we definitely think they can do it. And number two, we respect them enough to require it of them. And so that would sort of change the earlier dialogue, which is sort of more like our criminal justice dialogue, which is you do the crime, you do the time, right? You do something, you got to be suspended, whatever the time is. And you look at a chart to figure that out. Instead of, you do the crime, so let's figure out why it happened. And you are responsible for helping to repair the harm that you caused. And that might sometimes still include a consequence. It might even sometimes still include suspension. And it also has a learning piece. And we owe that to our children. And that's where I become passionate. That's where the heart comes in. So I hope that answered your question.
Oh, it did. It answered my question wonderfully, because as I was thinking about you explaining that, it gives young people an opportunity to not only think about what they did, but to really think about the impact
right
on the other person.
Yeah. Like the restorative question number 4. Who was affected by your actions? And we never ask that in the criminal justice system. In fact, in many schools and in the criminal justice system, we try to keep them as far from the person that they victimized as possible, instead of recognizing that they're going to return to that same community and that person is still going to be there. And they owe them something. An obligation arose when they made that mistake.
Yeah. So real change comes from the heart.
I think so. Yeah. For me, at least.
Yeah, I can agree with you, Kathy.
I know you can.
So I know you mentioned, that where you share with us, how you are now working with your district and how you have seen this work done with young people. But you did say something about, it can also work with adults. So I'm going to get a little personal, Kathy, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Yes. So can you share how restorative practices or even restorative justice has impacted you on a personal level?
Well, it definitely has. And I think it all started with my mentor. And he has passed away, but he was a great influence on me at MCRC in Howard County. And his name was Charles Tracy. Absolutely, absolutely adored him. And he helped me to sort of see what I couldn't see before. And he lived in a very restorative way. After starting off in the Korean War and then being a police officer and then being a professor of criminal justice, and then he learned about restorative justice. So he kind of came to it similarly to some of the ways that I came to it. And he would say, you'll get it soon. And he was just patient. And I would say, no, you do that stuff and I'll do the legal stuff. And he brought me along. And then I found that I am much, much less eager to blame people that I don't know for their problems. I just realize that there are so many things I don't know about what they are facing and have faced, what advantages they haven't had and have had. And I am not advocating that we excuse wrongdoing, crimes, or school discipline issues. I'm not advocating that. I am saying that we just shouldn't always use incarceration or removal from community like suspension as our only tool in our toolbox. It just plain doesn't work. So that's how it has affected me personally. And when I worked with those young people, and they were mostly young people in the detention center, they were mostly like 19, 20, 21. Some of them were there for their second and third time already. And when I worked with them, I would just think, I don't know, there's something very, very powerful about being with someone face to face to decrease the otherness. And I just found that there were so many different things they shared that made me realize, yeah, I don't know what you've been through, and I shouldn't be the one to be standing in judgment. So it did change me. It changed my heart and how I look at things. But it wasn't right away. It took me a long time.
Yeah, yeah. As I'm listening to you share, I really hear that passion,
Mhm.
and I see why you have the passion to transform that traditional way. We have done discipline and education for so long,
Mhm.
just blaming our young people for the mistakes they make. You
Mhm.
So thank you so much just for sharing that with us.
You're
So,
welcome.
so as we get ready to kind of close it on out, as it relates to restorative practices in Maryland, and we call it restorative approaches here
Mhm.
in the state, what would you like to leave with the people today about restorative practices in Maryland?
Well, I'm always kind of a pragmatist too. I feel like, yes, there's this sort of lofty feeling that this is the right, quote unquote, way to try to be with our fellow humans and all that. And I actually really do believe that. And you can say that till you're blue in the face to pretty much any system in this country,
Right.
and people will nod and say, yeah, you're right. But that doesn't mean there's going to be change. And so, what I want people to know is that sometimes people say it takes a lot more time and a lot more money. What you're advocating requires us to really pay attention to these humans instead of just putting them away and getting them out of our, so they don't pose any danger to us, so we can keep doing what we do. And I am saying that it's actually much more cost efficient if you look at it in the long run. We will save, it is worth our investment, both in time and money, to raise better people and citizens. And so far, I have not found a better way, theoretical or practical, than restorative practices, restorative justice, restorative approaches. All of those, they really focus on having the person understand their effect on the community and holding them accountable for trying to repair that. um, so for me, that's what I would leave people with, that don't, number one, don't think it's just huggy huggy, oh poor baby, we're not going to make you have any punishment for this bad thing that you did, and we're going to let you right back in the classroom. No, 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 it's not about that. So that's the one thing. It's about holding them accountable. And then the second thing is, if you actually start looking at time and money over decades, I believe fully that it is worth our investment in time and money to raise better humans. And so that's what I think, and that's what I would like to leave people with.
Well said, and I have nothing further to say. Once again, that's our time. And I want to thank you, Kathy Rockefeller, for spending your precious time with me on C Drum's Restorative Approaches, our stories, our voices. And until next time, be well.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. This podcast, copyright 2023, by the Center for Dispute Resolution at the University of Maryland Carey School of Law, is licensed for sharing under the Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license. For more information about the Creative Commons license, please visit creativecommons.org. All of the podcasts in this series are available on our Restorative Approaches Resources website, cdrum.org.